Hello and welcome to another standard video here in the Foundations metagame. Today I'm revisiting an old favorite of mine, which is Throne of the Grim Captain, which received a lot of new upgrades over time. This 2-mana legendary artifact can tap to mill 2 cards, and then we can craft with a dinosaur, merfolk, pirate, and vampire for 4 mana. So that means exiling those creatures from the graveyard, or maybe combine it with creatures that are on the battlefield. And then we get a Grim Captain, which is a 7/7 legendary skeleton spirit pirate. That's quite a mouthful. Also has menace, trample, a lifelink, and a very important hexproof. And then whenever the Grim Captain attacks, each opponent sacrifices a non-land permanent, and then we may put an exiled creature card used to craft the Grim Captain onto the battlefield under our control, tapped and attacking, which means we'll often get a 12/12 trampling Galta and Mavern on the battlefield. Now the attack trigger doesn't happen since it's put on the battlefield, tapped and attacking, but then on the following turn it can maybe make a large trampling dino or start making 1/1 vampire tokens with lifelink, because Galta and Mavern is both a dinosaur and a vampire, so that makes it a lot easier to craft those 4 different types with our Throne of the Grim Captain. And then a Taurian Mauler is also a nice reprint from Foundations, a 2/2 creature that picks up a +1/+1 counter whenever our opponent casts a spell. Not actually going to hardcast the Mauler all that often, but it does have the Changeling ability as well, so it has every creature type, including the 4 we need for Throne of the Grim Captain. So now if we already have some types in the graveyard, the Mauler can kind of fill whatever type we're missing, and we will still need to exile 4 creatures total, so the more Maulers we have, the easier it will be to get our Grim Captain online. And at least the Mauler is a bit better than the other Changeling creatures we had in Standard, so it's not too embarrassing to hardcast. And then a very important addition as well is Kiora, the Rising Tide, a 3/2 that gets to draw 2 and then discard 2 when it enters. It's also a merfolk, so that's one of the 4 types we need. And if we have Threshold enabled, when Kiora attacks, we get to make an 8/8 a legendary Scion of the Deep token. And since we're naturally filling the graveyard and milling ourselves with Throne, it's actually quite easy to enable Kiora in this deck as well. So it's a perfect addition. And then from there, we can fill out the deck in a variety of ways. I went blue-red because it also gives us access to Bitter Reunion, an enchantment that lets us discard and draw 2, and we can also sacrifice it to give our creatures haste until end of turn, so that's a way to maybe immediately attack with the Grim Captain, because once we craft it, it will still have Summoning Sickness, and being able to give it haste means we immediately get to attack, gain 7 life, and put maybe a Galta Mavern into play, so that can make a huge difference. And then rounding out the deck, we have some 1-mana pirates, Fanatical Firebrand reprinted, can sacrifice it to deal 1 damage, so that actually gives us some relevant interaction early against aggro decks, can take out a Heartfire Hero, or maybe a Scavenger out of the Aura decks, can take out a Lenor Elves out of the green decks, so it can do some useful things, can even chum block a Screaming Nemesis and then sacrifice it so we don't deal any damage to it, so that can also prevent the opponent from enabling the Nemesis ability. And then a Spyglass Siren gives us another 1-mana play, and the map token can maybe explore additional creatures into the graveyard or help us hit additional land drops, so it can still come in handy. And then at 2 mana, we had a lot of options. We could be playing the pirate that finds additional pirates and artifacts to find our throne more consistently. We could also play Malcolm as another discard outlet. There's even the Cutthroat, which counts as both a pirate and a merfolk, which would satisfy 2 different types. But instead I went with Floodpit's Drowner, just to add a bit more interaction into the deck, which is very important in the best of 1 meta, which has a lot of aggressive decks. And then the Drowner tapping a creature down and stunning it can potentially buy us enough time to set up our various combos. And then finally the Carnosaur also gives us more interaction, since we can discard it for 3 mana to deal 3 damage, and then getting it back with our Grim Captain is also not too bad. And then a mana base, just lots of blue-red dual lands and 6 of each basic. No real need for additional utility lands, since our game plan already uses up a lot of mana. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand is a little slow to get going. Maybe hoping to find a 2-mana play with Thundering Falls, and then double Kiora can hopefully find our throne. Yeah, on the draw this would be a mulligan. On the play we can maybe get away with it. And then certainly don't need another Mauler. Not a card you end up casting very often, but at least it's better than some of the artifact changelings in my opinion. Found Throne, that's excellent. Facing green-white, so not exactly sure what deck they're on. I see. Rabbits. Milled Galta Mavren. We've got Kioras for days. And I'll hang on to a backup throne just in case, I think. And then throne will activate Kiora to make an 8/8 next turn. So there's definitely a lot of synergy between these two cards. Ooh, Collector's Cage, I see. So your opponent is trying to cheat stuff into play. Now they still need an extra +1 counter before they can enable it, since currently they have 2 1-powered creatures, and they can get 2 2-powered ones or 1 3-powered one. But yeah, maybe next turn they can cheat something expensive into play for free. And a Dollmaker's Shop. Okay, so Recruit can attack. And Kiora can return the favor. And Drowner could also come in handy, maybe tapping down the elves in their upkeep. Or we can just transform our throne here, which is probably for the best. So let's start by attacking. Now a go wide deck can certainly chum block our 8/8 for a while. So it may not be the best matchup for it. But a big trampling dinosaur should help. And then we could maybe get another Kiora. Important to attack before crafting, because we did just exile a bunch of cards from our graveyard. But yeah, we'll see what the Collector's Cage can bring to the table. At 6 mana they can also unlock the Gallery, which will bump up their entire team. Another Recruits. Sure. And then now Cage is enabled, finding a backup Cage. So not quite the payoff they were hoping for. Now we do have to be careful, because Recruits, I guess they get to enable the second Cage now too with the extra land, and this time they did find an Overlord. Alright, so now we're talking. So, yeah, I was gonna say the Drowner still triggers Recruit, because it also triggers off abilities. So that's kind of a concern, because it would get 4 triggers. Still tempted to use Drowner on the Overlord, but yeah, the game got a lot more complicated all of a sudden, especially with Gallery being a possibility next turn. So I think for now we just attack, put in Galta and Mavren. Kiora stays home. And then we might need to transform a second Grim Captain. And double block Captain, so can take out the Overlord here at least. And then what's next? Can play another Throne. And then the plan's probably Drowner, tap down the Elves so they cannot unlock the Porcelain Gallery, which could otherwise kill me. And then they'll get 3 +1 counters here. They can still use Elves to activate Collector's Cage. But in case the game is not over next turn, still seems better to keep the Elves locked down for an extra turn. Because yeah, they did have the extra land to enable the gallery. Now we take 8. But our opponent's facing Galta on the way back. I see Virtue of Loyalty. That's gonna add a lot of power and toughness here. So yeah, we could still lose this easily. So what's my best play? I guess just attack. And hope to make some trades, and then we can make another captain. Could maybe attack with Kiora, although we've got plenty of maulers, so the Kiora attack would just get blocked by a 5-4. Means fewer 5-4s that can block Galta and Mavrin, I suppose. Yeah, I think I'm better off keeping it back as a blocker. And we also get to make a large trampling dinosaur, of course. So definitely could have done more math to see if an all-out attack was worth it. And then prioritize the flyers. Opponent is going to trade for the dino as well. So if they lose their entire board, all of a sudden Virtue of Loyalty and Gallery don't look as scary. So yeah, trample, an important keyword. Yeah, given how much our opponent's struggling with the blocks, I feel like I maybe should have attacked all out. Because Kiora plus Drowner are presenting lethal. So, next. And trample for 4. Take out Flyer, recruit, trample for 2. So yeah, I guess our opponent's just dead. They couldn't quite figure out their blocks in time. Alright, sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Our hands may be a bit light on card filtering. No throne in sight and no way to draw towards it besides the surveil. So I think we can do better. Alright, this is better. And then I probably don't need 2 Kioras. Start with a tapped Thundering Falls. Bitter Reunion is a way to maybe get a hasty captain attacking, but we're probably better off just going turn 2 Throne and then hope to draw a 3rd land naturally. Although Reunion could find a 3rd land, and then we want to play Kiora, but then it's going to be turn 5 before we play Throne. Although there's a chance I can then attack with haste if I keep hitting my land drops. So, in a sense, Bitter Union's not bad, in case we were gonna miss our 3rd land drop. And then turn 1 Swamp, so Deep Cavern Bats could be in our future, which is a reason to hang on to the Firebrand. So, I kinda just want to get the Throne going, to be honest. And then if we're gonna miss a land drop next turn, I can still play the Reunion. It's gonna be Maze Mine Tome instead, alright, so it's a more controlling take on Mono Black. Alright, already milled some goodies. Did not find a land, so I'm gonna Reunion, discarding probably the Carnosaur at this point. Should have maybe activated Throne in response to the Surveil trigger. I guess our opponent gives us a chance to now. In case we want to keep something on top, like a 4th land. Yeah, definitely don't need a 3rd one. Alright, so taking a look at our types. Dinosaur, Vampire, Pirate, Merfolk. So with a 4th land we can transform Throne. If not, Kiora will also be active. Opponent with Annex looking like a demon deck. Could even consider, if we draw 4th land, going for a hasty Kiora of Bitter Reunion, to immediately make a Kraken, but we ended up drawing the final throne instead. Alright, so time for Kiora. And then might still want to hang on to one extra throne in case some edict effect gets rid of our captain. And Firebrand would still be decent in the face of a Deep Cavern Bat, but we also have Carnosaur as an answer now. So that can probably go. And then, yeah, I'm not actually hating hasty Kiora, just to make a Kraken. And then our captain is more protected from a potential sacrifice effect. Now an 8/8 still potentially gets exiled by Anoint with Affliction, which some mono-black decks play. Opponent draws with Tome. And Annex draws. Okay. Opponent discarding a Liliana Dreadhorde General, so their curve is definitely going higher, which means they could be on the 5-mana board wipe as well. So that has me a little concerned. And perhaps a reason not to transform Throne right now. Although it's not like we have some amazing alternatives. So let me start by attacking, see what happens. Ooh, go for the throw to token. The timing here is not great, since now we can make a replacement. Since it is legendary. So they should have waited for the trigger to resolve. Alright, so do we put our opponent on having a cover-up? They do get to gain some life next turn with Toe, maybe Scry towards line 5. I think we're in a position where with another Throne we can still potentially get there. Assuming they don't exile it. And then we've got Dinosaur or Vampire. I guess I'm forced to get rid of the Carnosaur as well. Merfolk and Pirates. Alright, so don't wipe the board, please. We do still have 2 decent follow-ups in hand, but without haste, they've got an opportunity to take out Kiora with some spot removal before it makes an 8/8. And our opponent explodes. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. We've got our Throne and lots of types to put in the graveyard. Facing turn 1 Heartfire Hero. Drew Siren. Would have been happier with a Firebrand being able to take out the hero right away. But I'll still take the 1-drop. And now Manifold Mouse is bad news. So I probably don't have time to play Throne and I'll just have to go for Floodpit's Drowner. And I actually think it's fine to chump while we get the chance, because they might give their creatures trample in the future. And then for now we can tap down the Heartfire Hero. Opponent is on an Aura deck after all, so they could actually have a Shard Mage's Rescue for protection. Which it would hurt. And that worked out at least. If they attack here, it implies a pump spell, so opponent reconsiders and plays Scavenger. Alright, so we have options. Don't hate using the Carnosaur this turn. Could also activate the Drowner just to get rid of the Heartfire Hero to mitigate some damage. And then just play a tapped Falls, which also uses up all my mana. So maybe get in for 2. And then have to do this now. And do we want a Firebrand? Yeah, I guess it's not the worst. Can maybe answer a Scavenger and we can play a 3-drop alongside it. Feather of Flight to Mouse. So that's going to have double strike here in a second. Alright, so what we can do is use the Firebrand. I'm debating whether or not I want to activate it now. Given that the mouse flies, it's not like I can jump and then sacrifice. And letting them untap maybe opens up more plays on their part. But I could buy just letting them untap and doing it in their upkeep maybe, since I do still have 2 mana available. And then if we can use Firebrand as bait for them to protect Scavenger and then end up successfully using Carnosaur on Manifold Mouse, that's not bad. Alright, that worked. So I'm assuming this is going to work as well. Alright, so we've got a clear board. And this also highlights the importance of our creatures doubling up as interaction, the Floodspit's Drowner as well. So we actually have a chance against aggro. Now our opponent might still have their Sheltered by Ghosts in hand. So we could try to bait that out, although it seems like they don't have any creatures left. Otherwise, my Throne can transform next turn already, potentially. Could also try hitting a land drop with Kiora, and then still play a Throne. Alright, so Carnosaur and Mauler can go. And play Throne. And then Throne also enables Kiora to make an Octopus token. So we're attacking from a lot of different angles. And wow, opponent scoops it up. Yeah, Throne enables Kiora, and then next turn we'll have our Grim Captain as well. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and we've got a promising hand. The tap lands could be a liability. Mauler happy to put in the graveyard. So it's unlikely that we have a captain on turn 4, since we need to probably play a Kiora first. But maybe if we get lucky with our mill 2, we might still get there. Ooh, duress, that's very painful. So may as well surveil now. And we need to find a backup copy. Yeah, Deep Cavern Bat would have been fine, but turn 1 duress, that'll get us. So our opponent a mono black. At least Kiora can put Galta Mavern in the graveyard. Although can expect mono black to have an answer to a 3-2. Right, I guess it is black-green after all. I'll hang on to the Carnosaur. So next turn I could potentially discard it, plus maybe surveil a non-land into the graveyard to enable Kiora. But more realistically, opponent just removes it. And yeah, we're just kind of hoping for another Throne. Mauler, probably not good enough, if we're being honest. There will be a time where Mauler actually gets cast, but I don't think the time is now. Especially in the face of a Dread Knight, which can just jump block it forever. I'll hang on to Carnosaur to just cast it if it lines up better, and yeah, in the face of a 2-4, 3 damage is not quite good enough. Could take out the Elves. I think we try to hardcast Carnosaur since we don't seem to have anything else going on. Could also consider keeping Siren back, block Preacher, and then Carnosaur. But I think we're still more likely to want to cast it, and the 2 damage could matter. So yeah, that duress was timely. In the meantime, we have all the types we need. A Bitter Union would be a good draw too, because then once we do top deck our throne, we can immediately transform it. Given 7 mana, 2 to play it, 4 to transform, and 1 more for the haste from Reunion. Opponent's got the Annex to keep drawing. And a Sentinel. Alright, so the mid-range deck doing its thing. And we don't have much time here, since they are applying a good bit of pressure. We drew the Bitter Union. That's a close call now, between casting it or going for Carnosaur. I do like the fact that Carnosaur just puts a body in play. So maybe we'll still start there. And we hit a Kiora, so that was lucky. And then Firebrand can take out an Elves, but otherwise probably better off keeping double Reunion even to dig the deepest. So they might be able to make a Demon this turn to gain some life back. Archfiends, also good. And removal for Carnosaur. Kiora can still make an 8/8, but that's just going to run into the Archfiend as well. So we're at 9. And we gotta keep digging. Drowner's not bad, and a Throne. Okay, so definitely play Throne, and then Drowner taps down Archfiend. Does Kiora even attack? It dies, gets us drained for 2, but makes an 8/8. Yeah, I guess that's still worth it. So, start there. And then Drowner in their turn to keep the Demon tapped down for an extra turn, because they have Sentinel anyways to block Kiora. So I'm still hanging on to a little bit of hope here. Maelstrom pulls Siren. Yeah, that hurts. So this kind of implies another answer for the Octopus as well. Or I guess they're just hoping the Flyer can get the job done. But yeah, opponent had double pulls. So we're gonna go to 3, tap down Archfiend and still die. Yeah, that's a shame. Since next turn we would have been able to attack with a Hasty Captain as well. With enough Drowners, you could also potentially win the game, thanks to the Archfiend's alternate win condition. But yeah, that's not going to happen here. And then end of turn we take 2 more from the Annex. So it wasn't meant to be. But yeah, all came down to that turn 1 duress. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have our Throne and some other draw and discard, so sign me up. Let's see what we're up against. Turn 1 Mountain, no play. Possible they had a creature, but they didn't want to play it because it dies to the Firebrand. Now I probably need to prioritize hitting my land drops with Bitter Union as opposed to just playing a Throne. Although, could always do that next turn if we miss. And then the highest upside is Throne starting to fill my graveyard. So we can eventually, maybe turn 4 already, transform it. Glad our opponent didn't wait for me to attack. So we got one more damage in. And an Artist's Talent, so it's a more controlling red deck. Well, hopefully they don't have a Braid to destroy my throne. We milled Galta Mavern. No land, so we need to Reunion. And then Mauler can go. Found the land. And then, yeah, pass it back. Kiora also close to active, so could also consider giving Kiora haste with a Reunion to make a Kraken. Especially if our opponent taps out. Because Monored's not going to have an easy time answering an 8-8. Alright, found the land. So yeah, we can save Reunion for the captain. And what can go wrong here? If I just make a captain, there's no sweeper that deals with a 7/7 hexproof. And then next turn we get a Galta Mavern. So that might still be better than Kiora make an 8-8. So we've got Vampire or Dinosaur, Pirate, Merfolk. Now possible our opponent's playing a second color, which will maybe change things. Opponent keeps on leveling up the talent. And plays another one. Okay. So we should have lethal here, with Grim Captain putting in Galtan Mavern plus Hasty Kiora. And then sacking Reunion even adds a 7th card for Kiora to make an 8-8. So all according to plan. Opponent has to sack their enchantments. And dies. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. This hand is not great with triple Galta and Mavern. 2 with a Kiora could be okay, since we can discard them both. Although this hand also needs to hit a 3rd land drop. The Surveil helps, but then we're not doing anything turns 1 and 2. So I think we can do better. Not a huge improvement, but a slight one. Now we're relying on Thundering Falls to find our throne. Opponents with a Portico, so maybe a domain deck. So Surveil, probably bottom here. So yeah, opponent's gonna have answers to our throne if we find it with a Leyline Binding. So that's a concern. And their late game in general is quite strong. The hexproof on our Grim Captain, not always good enough in the face of a Sunfall. So this seems like a tough matchup, especially with kind of a clunky start. Did find a throne at least, but opponent can already play 1 mana Binding. If we're worried about Firebrand getting exiled, we could also just sacrifice it. It's going to be a hard-cast Overlord for now. So, opponent's making a lot of mana. And we still haven't milled any creatures. Kiora helps. So, I guess we'll activate to get a bit more info. And then Kiora is active, so Might already incentivize them to deal with it. Ooh, Eternal Schemer can give the opponent stuff a lifelink and hexproof. It's gonna animate another Overlord. And attack. So if they get some more triggers, I can chump with a Firebrand and deal one to the opponent to kind of soak up an attack. Or we can next turn attack with Kiora and then they won't be able to block with Zur, which is maybe fine. Alright, found a Bitter Reunion, although I'm going to be short of playing Reunion, transforming this and activating, so no hasty Captain right now, but it's good to have access to. So I'll go to attackers, probably see removal on Kiora before I get a chance to make a token, no. So that triggers. Of course I can just remove the token. Opponent blocks with Zur, we'll let damage happen first. And then now Firebrand could finish off the Eternal Schemer, although that does mean one fewer chum blocker available. And so then if our opponent removes the Scion, we could just die. But I think it's still worth it. And then, yeah, it's a tough call, because yeah, removal on Scion is bad. But now what we could maybe do is transform the throne if we mill some more types. But that makes us weaker in the face of a Sunfall. So yeah, I can activate it. We've got Dino, Vampire, Pirate, and then a Merfolk in play. But yeah, Sunfall would be painful, because then we need to rebuild with another throne. But I guess we can get that started. But yeah, I think this is still necessary to make sure we don't just die to a single spot removal spell. And then we still have Gul'dan Mavern for a second throne. So our two creatures are currently bigger than Overlords. Opponent's got another Zur, which explains why they were okay blocking. And our opponent attacks. Alright, so trade the Scion. Keep our Captain, because they do have Death Touch now. And an Overlord Hardcast, also quite strong here. Alright, so I can attack, put in probably a Gul'dan Mavern, since Kiora doesn't make a token when put in play tapped and attacking. The Carnosaur taking out a single token doesn't really make a difference. So, yeah, I guess we'll attack. Sitting back is not really an improvement. So, yeah, now they could block Overlord and the token. If I Carnosaur the token, they can still double block with Zur. So I think this is fine to go to blocks. Opponent takes it. We're back up to 11. So yeah, probably just gonna play the Siren. And Carnosaur can take care of their token. And hopefully that's good enough. Yeah, I guess if our opponent's on the Eternal Schemer build of Overlords, they might be lighter on a bunch of spot removal. So their opponent attacks, makes more tokens in the process. We're forced to chump the 6/6. Could have also done the math to see if taking out my own Siren to deny the life gain would have been worth it. But yeah, it doesn't seem like we're gonna have enough, especially with Gul'dan Mavern being legendary. So now we're looking at Kiora on the battlefields. Start with a Bitter Union, maybe. The Grim Captain's also legendary, so we can have a second one in play to attack with, but wow. Opponent scoops it up to the Bitter Union. That's very strange. Because they certainly weren't dead here. Gul'dan Mavern does get to trigger this time, making either a large Trampler, would just be a 7/7, or we could make, you know, a couple Vampire tokens, but that's not going to be enough. So, yeah, not sure why they scooped it up here, but sure, I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand seems quite poor. No throne, no discard and draw effects. This I can certainly keep. And then, in general, I've been preferring Firebrand over Siren, even though this hand could use a third land. So maybe that's the tiebreaker here. Nah, I'll still go with Firebrand. I'll need to draw a third land eventually. And drawing Firebrand right away makes me regret my decision. Sure, we can attack for one. If they play Deep Cavern Bat, I can still take it out with a Firebrand next turn and cast my 2-drop on curve. Right, another throne, so one of these may also get countered. That resolves. And blue-black, outside of maybe bounce spells, is not going to have many ways to remove it. I see Mastermind, so that also dies to a Firebrand activation. Definitely want to do it before playing Kiora. Would have been a reason in this matchup to not attack with Firebrand until we know there's no Mastermind if we were to play a card draw effect. Ooh, but a Kaito, that's a good way to punish not keeping Firebrand available.
I learned something in Don't worry, Pom Punch.
Okay, so they've got a Planeswalker in play now. And yeah, the Drowner cannot tap it down once it has hexproof.
My eyes are as sharp as my sword.
So really need a third land now. And we got there. And play Kiora. At least with Throne, Kiora is also threatening to make an 8/8. And then... now what do we get rid of? We already have Pirate and Merfolk. Probably prefer Drowner over the 1-drops. And I could see a backup Throne being useful too. So, with a good mill here, and next turn we might already have our captain on the battlefield, as well as maybe making an octopus token. But blue-black is going to have removal spells. They could also use Kaito to keep Kiora tapped down. If we scroll down here, there's a third ability. Yeah, remember the first time facing Kaito and my opponent tapped my creature down, and I was reading the card, struggling to figure out how this happened, and then I saw the scroll bar. So Kaito hits for 3. No blocks. Kaito draws.
Your secrets didn't stay hidden for long.
So our best hope is that the Grim Captain goes unopposed here. Hexproof is pretty good against blue-black. Opponent did have the cut down for Kiora, sadly. But that was to be expected. And a Siren. Firebrand still important to have on the battlefield on the off chance that our opponent has an edict effect to make us sacrifice a creature. Not the best mill so far. Alright, so we have Dinosaur, Vampire, Merfolk, Pirates, but we're still missing a second Dinosaur or Vampire. So not quite there yet. I don't think it's worth it to play another Throne since they're legendary. So instead we're gonna Surveil and then play a Drowner. Carnosaur's another Dinosaur, so that lets us transform Throne next turn. Although still won't have haste. So we're taking quite a beating here from Kaito. Firebrand can answer the Mastermind. Opponent plays it out. Yeah, probably fine to do this now. Explores and Anoint with Affliction. Says no. And then I'm probably fine using the Drowner now. Especially if they have Enduring Curiosity, we don't want them drawing even more cards. But yeah, I don't think I can afford to jump on the off chance that they have the Edict. But they have been steadily drawing an extra card each turn. So this captain's gonna have to do a lot of heavy lifting. And wow, our opponent explodes. Yeah, I guess they don't have an answer to the captain, and they know it's eventually gonna get them. So yeah, we were on the receiving end that entire game, but just one captain good enough to get it done. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand is missing a Throne. We do have Bitter Reunion to try and find it. Yeah, maybe this is okay. At least with double Galtan Mavern, we're very close to having all the types. Just need another discard outlets. Opponent with a Lanor Elves, which they weren't able to play turn 1. And now I kind of like Drowner to tap it down. So it's going to be out of commission for 2 turns. So they can use a mana in their upkeep, but not in their main phase, which is where the scary things happen. And I'm totally fine if that's their turn. So their turn should just be land go. Alright, another Elves, fair enough. Firebrand and answer. So I guess I'll Reunion in case I draw another Spire Bluff. And then we can still Firebrand the Elves. Found our Throne, so yeah, this game is shaping up. Could have also decided to keep Firebrand in case our opponent plays a Deep Cavern Bat, so they cannot take the Throne away for good, but Carnosaur also answers the Bat. And I would rather slow them down here. Glissa, good one to remove with a Carnosaur, otherwise they could blow up my enchantments. So yeah, we'll keep kind of playing the control role, and then we can maybe set up a hasty captain in the near future. Kiora is not a bad draw. Sure. Since it can also threaten to make 8/8 tokens, and if it draws into a land I can play it alongside Throne. And then 5 mana is enough to transform and give haste. Opponent's got to annex for card advantage, that's fine. And a Dread Knight. Okay. So far so good. So really want an untapped land here. Didn't quite get there. So still discarding Galta and Maverin, and maybe Kiora. Drowner's good for tapping down demons. Firebrand now can answer the elves at least. Kiora will now be active as well. So they will probably need to use removal on it. And then hopefully we can deploy the throne next turn. So cut down Kiora means they can't make a demon. It's gonna be yet another elves and annex. So their opponent's life total is also getting quite low. So hasty creature with Reunion could close out the game out of nowhere. But yeah, it's gotta be throne. If I go for a hasty Drowner, I can put our opponent to 2, but then they make a demon and stabilize. So we would much rather keep the Drowner to tap down their demon. And then next turn we should have it with a transformed captain. They also have a cottage, which could technically exile stuff from our graveyard, but we should have enough types that it doesn't matter. And the rest, that one's gonna miss. I guess we can show them the Drowner before we cast it. Tap that down, may as well mill. So our opponent back up to 8, but a Bitter Union is going to be a big help here. May as well mill 2 more since we're going to get an untapped captain. And then we've got Vampire, Dinosaur, Merfolk, Pirates. I guess something else I could have actually considered was giving the Drowner haste in order to immediately remove the demon token before they got a chance to gain life with Unholy Annex. But I guess that would have required additional mana to activate the Drowner right away. But yeah, maybe a cute interaction to keep in mind for the future. Alright, so we get to see our blue-red Grim Captain deck in action, and the card that impressed the most, of course, is Kiora, holding everything together, giving us a discard outlet as well as an alternate win condition, so it synergizes perfectly in this list. And then the Mauler, even though we never cast it, was still useful for getting extra types, so we did get some useful new cards in recent expansions to kind of upgrade the deck and hopefully make it viable, but it is still going to be kind of a tier 2 or 3 deck at most, since it is still a little bit janky, requires a bit of setup. Getting the captain in play doesn't necessarily mean we get to attack with it right away, so there are still answers out there that can prevent the captain from ever attacking. So it's not the most reliable plan, especially once you move to best of 3, where graveyard hate is going to be more prevalent. So still a fun deck to try out, but nothing serious. So that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.